The terrorist organization Hezbollah has agreed to a ceasefire with Israel, but they're also continuing to fire rockets and suicide drones at our country. In the last 24 hours, they fired over 100 weapons into the Galilee, the Haifa Bay, and even into the northern suburbs of Tel Aviv. The IDF has responded to these attacks, and the skyline of Beirut will never be the same, especially the Dacha neighborhood of southern Beirut, which has long been a Hezbollah stronghold. The IDF ground forces have also continued to put pressure on Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, eliminating hundreds of terrorists, destroying tunnels and bunkers, and capturing enormous stocks of weapons and ammunition. This is including brand new Russian-built equipment. Meanwhile, in the Gaza Strip, Hamas's last stronghold is about to fall, and new details are emerging about the battle that could bring about a successful end to this conflict. Later in the broadcast, our senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani will give us an overview of what's happening in the Middle East and take a closer look at some of the major developments in our neighborhood. This includes the departure of senior Hamas officials from Qatar and their reported arrival in Turkey, as well as a subsequent meeting between Israeli and Turkish intelligence officials. Speaking of high-level meetings, Mati Shoshani will also tell us about a report that Elon Musk secretly met with Iranian officials in recent days. There's a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on the 411th day of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, all the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria, and of course, we know they're all being directed by Iran, the head of the axis of evil in the Middle East. A moment before we begin, please look for the subscribe button so that you will never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Today's video is sponsored by Arza Box. If you don't know Arza yet, stay tuned because I think you'll like it. Let me just say, I'm getting reaction photos with the Arza boxes from satisfied customers, and it really warms my heart. Later in the report, I'll explain how all of you can enjoy that experience. But first, as always, the news. Significant developments are unfolding on Israel's northern border with Lebanon, marking a potential turning point in the long-lasting conflict with Hezbollah, a group designated as a terrorist organization by Israel, the United States, and several other countries. In recent days, Hezbollah has escalated its attacks against Israel, launching rockets and missiles not only at northern regions, but reaching as far as central Israel, including Tel Aviv and its suburbs. These aggressive actions by Hezbollah are a clear attempt to challenge Israel's security and sovereignty with the overarching goal of establishing a deterrent balance whereby any attack on Beirut will be met with attacks on Tel Aviv, in the center of Israel. By increasing the range and intensity of its attacks, Hezbollah is also trying to establish bargaining points that it can use in negotiations over a ceasefire, which it badly needs since it suffered an undeniable strategic defeat in this war. Lebanese media personality Khalil Nasrallah, who is affiliated with Hezbollah, declared openly this week that the attacks are meant to demonstrate that Israel is negotiating under fire just like Hezbollah is. However, Israel remains resolute in its commitment to defend its citizens and its borders. Therefore, in response to Hezbollah's aggression, the Israeli Defense Forces have intensified operations in southern Lebanon. Notably, this included an announcement on Tuesday about the successful elimination of Tali Tawfik Dawayak, the commander of Hezbollah's medium-range rocket array. This evil man was responsible for hundreds of rockets launched into the Israeli territory, including attacks on Haifa and central Israel. He will be very difficult to replace, and his removal is a significant blow to Hezbollah's capabilities. Beyond that, the Israeli Air Force has conducted extensive airstrikes on Hezbollah's strongholds, including in the Dacha district in Beirut. over 200 high-rise buildings used by the organization have been destroyed, significantly disrupting their operations. These strikes are part of Israel's broader strategy to dismantle Hezbollah's terrorist infrastructure. By targeting key figures and destroying military assets, Israel aims to neutralize the threat posed by Hezbollah and restore peace and security to its northern border. Hezbollah faces increasing challenges due to Israel's military campaign against it. The group's ability to launch rockets and other weapons into Israel has been severely constrained, and there is growing discontent within Lebanon regarding Hezbollah's actions as civilians bear the brunt of the conflict. Meanwhile, U.S. envoy Amos Hochstein has arrived in Beirut to facilitate negotiations aimed to achieve a ceasefire on terms that ensure Israel's security interests are met. The proposed ceasefire includes important provisions, including the withdrawal of Hezbollah forces from the border area, adjustments to international oversight, and measures to prevent the transfer of weapons to Hezbollah. Israel seeks a lasting solution that will dismantle Hezbollah's terrorist capabilities and bring stability to the northern border, and welcomes the involvement of the international community in bringing about these results. However, in the end, Israel knows that it must do what is necessary to restore security to its citizens and ensure that Hezbollah cannot rebuild its military infrastructure and rocket arsenal to threaten the Galilee once again. Speaking of Hezbollah's arsenal, the Wall Street Journal reported on Tuesday morning that IDF soldiers are finding large caches of Russian-built weapons, ammunitions, and military equipment inside Lebanon. An Israeli officer even clarified that around 70% of the weapons captured by the IDF ground forces in Lebanon are of Russian manufacture. According to Arab security officials, the weapons were smuggled into Lebanon from Syria, to which Russia has supplied arms since 2015, when Russian soldiers began fighting alongside Hezbollah in support of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's regime. The publication confirms Israel's long-standing suspicion that Hezbollah is enhancing its combat capabilities with modern, high-tech Russian weapons. Although Israeli military officials have long known that Hezbollah possessed Russian-manufactured equipment, the extent of the buildup and the level of sophistication has come as a surprise. Israel has not had direct access to southern Lebanon since 2006, and this made it difficult to obtain information about Hezbollah's capabilities. Security officials quoted in the story explained that whenever Hezbollah has a shortage of weapons, it draws from Russian stockpiles located in Syria. This includes sophisticated anti-tank missiles and explosives. Large quantities of these weapons and equipment were found less than a kilometer from the Israeli-Lebanese border, both above and below the ground. IDF soldiers quoted in the Wall Street Journal story explained that they are finding these weapons in bunkers, tunnels, and also in civilian homes and warehouses. The report added that Russian government and the Syrian Foreign Ministry did not respond to requests for a comment. Amidst all of this, the IDF spokesperson announced on Monday that Air Force fighter jets struck Hezbollah positions in the city of Jos in southern Lebanon. The strikes, which were made under the guidance of the Intelligence Directorate and the Northern Command, resulted in the elimination of Ali Tawfiq Dawiyak, the commander of Hezbollah's medium-range rocket array. Dawiyak, starting from September of 2024, after his predecessor in the role was eliminated in an IDF strike. During his short time in command of these rocket launching squads, Dawiyak was responsible for more than 300 launches towards the Israeli territory, including the Haifa area, which is an Israeli city, and central Israel. The strike, which eliminated Dawiyak, was only the most recent in a series of such strikes meant to degrade Hezbollah's ability to fire rockets and suicide drones into the Israeli territory. By eliminating the commanders, who are usually the most highly trained and experienced operators of the rocket launching equipment, the IDF hopes to improve the security of Israel's civilian communities. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to closely monitor developments going forward. The hope is that there will be a de-escalation of hostilities and eventually a long ceasefire. But for now, this does not appear to be the highest priority for Hezbollah. This continuing war keeps taking the lives of innocent people and heroic soldiers, but it's also affecting Israelis far from the front. Families and entire communities have been evacuated from their homes, and many have also been mobilized into the IDF reserves. Also, as you know, there is almost no tourism in Israel, so the economy has suffered a big hit. I know you, our loyal viewers, love Israel, and many of you probably also yearn to once again visit us and walk in the footsteps of Jesus here on the land. I also believe you are all very eager to help us here in this awful situation. Well, I have a perfect way to do both. Help Israel and also get a great souvenir until you can come visit us again. I'm talking about Arza boxes, locally produced, handmade products delivered directly to your doorsteps. Arza boxes are filled with flavors, scents, and craftsmanship made right here by local artisans. So ordering Arza boxes is not only a great gift to yourself or to your loved ones, it's a true blessing for Israel's hard-working men and women. You can find out more by visiting www.arzabox.com, and don't forget to use our exclusive 10% discount by entering the code TBNIL, and you will find original gifts for Christmas or any other occasion. Thank you for taking part in our campaign for Israel's future. Please help us spread the truth by sharing this video on YouTube, subscribing to this YouTube channel, and following us on social media. If you haven't already, take a moment and click on the subscribe button so that you will never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Significant shifts are occurring in the Middle East that could have profound implications for regional dynamics and security. Reports have emerged of senior Hamas leaders relocating from Qatar to Turkey. This follows Qatar's recent decision to halt mediation efforts between Israel and Hamas amidst reports that Hamas officials are no longer welcome in Doha, the capital of Qatar. Additionally, high-level meetings between Israeli and Turkish intelligence chiefs have taken place, raising questions about Turkey's role in these developments. To help us understand the implications of these events and what they might mean for the future of the region, we turn now to TBN Israel senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani. Mati, what can you tell us about these significant developments?
Thank you, Yair. These recent developments you're referring to signal potentially significant shifts in the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. Let's start by taking a closer look at the relocation of the Hamas leadership from Qatar to Turkey. Now, over the past few days, credible reports have emerged indicating that senior members of Hamas's external leadership have left the luxury hotels in Doha, Qatar, and set up shop in more modest quarters in Turkey. This includes key figures in the Hamas leadership structure who have been instrumental in the organization's strategic planning, diplomatic outreach, and coordination of activities outside of the Gaza Strip. Now, this relocation appears to be a direct consequence of Qatar's recent decision to suspend its mediation efforts between Israel and Hamas concerning a potential hostage exchange deal. Now, moreover, it suggests that Qatar has conveyed to Hamas leadership that they are no longer welcome to operate from within the borders of the country. Now, to better understand the gravity of this development, we really need to consider Qatar's historical relationship with the Hamas movement and its role in the regional politics up till now. Now, Qatar has long positioned itself as a mediator in Middle Eastern conflicts, leveraging its relationships with various actors to facilitate dialogue and negotiations. Its financial support and hosting of Hamas leaders have been critical in maintaining lines of communication, especially during times of heightened tensions. However, and always howevers are big in the Middle East, last week, Qatar's foreign ministry announced the cessation of its mediation efforts, stating that it would resume only when there is necessary seriousness to end the war. This announcement included pointed criticism of both Israel and the Hamas, expressing frustration over the lack of progress and accusing both sides of not negotiating in good faith. Now, there are indications that Qatar's decisions may be influenced by international pressures, particularly from the United States. An American official was quoted saying that Hamas leadership have no place in the capital of a country that is the partner of the United States. Now, this suggests that Qatar may be recalibrating its foreign policy to align more closely with Western interests. The relocation of its leadership is a significant development for Hamas. In Qatar, they had a stable base of operations and very comfortable accommodations in the world-class luxury hotels of Doha, the capital. Moving from there to Turkey may present logistical and strategic challenges, and it also means much less comfortable surroundings, at least initially. Even after they get settled in, building the necessary infrastructure and security in a new country is a complex undertaking. There's also the language barrier to consider, as Turkish is a very different language from the Arabic spoken in Qatar. And this all brings us to the refuge being given to Hamas leaders by Turkey, which is shrouded in ambiguity. Turkey has long maintained relations with Hamas, viewing it as a legitimate political entity rather than solely a militant organization, much less terrorist organization. This perspective has often put Turkey at odds with Israel and some Western nations. Now, on that note, it's important to point out that this week, Israel's Shin Bet chief, Ronen Bar, made a secret visit to Turkey, meeting with his counterpart, Ibrahim Kalin, head of Turkey's National Intelligence Organization. This meeting suggests active discussions between Israel and Turkey regarding Hamas's activities and possibly efforts to mitigate potential threats. Israel views these developments through the lens of national security, because the potential establishment of Hamas operations in Turkey could provide Hamas with a new platform for coordinated activities and possibly even executing or planning attacks against Israel. Now, another source of ambiguity is the long-standing diplomatic tension between Israel and Turkey over the past 2 decades. These tensions have periodically eased and intensified, with periods of calm often shattered suddenly by unexpected events and a wave of hostility from the Turkish government, and specifically President Erdogan. However, recent high-level meetings indicate a willingness to engage on security matters, which could be pivotal in addressing mutual concerns. Now, in this context, Israel may see an opportunity to collaborate with Turkey to limit Hamas's capabilities while also navigating the broader geopolitical shifts resulting from Qatar's changed stance on this topic. Qatar's distancing from the Hamas terrorist organization and Turkey's potential involvement could all signal a realignment of regional alliances. Countries may reassess their positions based on these changes, affecting diplomatic and economic relationships between many countries and sub-state actors, such as the Hamas and other terrorist organizations. For instance, with Qatar's decision to step back from mediation, Egypt may take on a more prominent role. Historically, Egypt has been a key mediator between Israel and Hamas, now given its control over the Rafah border crossing and its influence in the Arab world. Changes in external support and leadership locations may also affect the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, while reducing funding and support could exacerbate existing challenges for the civilian population that remain in that area. The international community is closely monitoring these developments. The U.S. has significant sway in the region and may have influenced Qatar's decision. By pushing for a reduction in support for Hamas, the U.S. aims to weaken the organization and reduce its capacity to carry out terrorist activities. Now, parallel to all of this, the EU, which also designated Hamas as a terrorist organization, may support efforts to limit the group's operations overall. However, in many European capitals, there's also concern for the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip and a big desire to push for a sustainable peace process. And meanwhile, the United States may need to adjust its approaches in providing aid and facilitating dialogue, considering the changing roles of regional actors. Now, there are several possible scenarios going forward in the Middle East. And of course, in this area, everything can happen. Hamas could find itself increasingly isolated, with fewer countries and sub-state actors willing to host or engage with Hamas leadership. This might drive Hamas to become more moderate, but it might also make it more desperate and willing to take risks, which we've seen in the past, which could make it more dangerous, at least in the short term, as we try to negotiate an end to the conflict. Another possibility is that Hamas will renew negotiations with an understanding that their position has weakened, and thus they need to be more flexible. If new mediation efforts are undertaken, there may be a window for advancing discussions on ceasefires or prisoner exchanges, hopefully. So to sum up, Yair, the relocation of Hamas leadership from Qatar to Turkey, Qatar's cessation of mediation, and the secret meetings between Israeli and Turkish intelligence officials are significant developments with far-reaching implications. And to add on top of all of that, the new election of President Trump changes everything in the Middle East. More on that next week, of course. For Hamas, these changes present operational and strategic challenges that could impact its influence and effectiveness. For Israel, there are both opportunities and risks in engaging with Turkey and capitalizing on Qatar's shift to weaken Hamas. And ultimately, the situation remains fluid. The coming weeks and months will be critical in determining whether these changes lead to reduced tensions and renewed dialogue, or whether they result in further instability and conflict in this already war-stricken region. One thing is for sure, that here in TBN Israel, we'll continue to monitor these events closely and provide updates as more information becomes available. Now back to you, Yair.
Thank you, Mati, for all the information. A moment before we move on to developments in the Gaza Strip and the battle in Hamas's last stronghold, I want to ask you to continue spreading the truth. We'll continue to report to you, but today, more than ever, we need you so that we can continue to produce up-to-date and detailed content about what is happening in Israel. Support us through the link that you see below, tbnisrael.com/give, and together we'll share the truth as far as possible. Now, getting back into the news and shifting our focus once again to events in the Gaza Strip. The Jabalia refugee camp has become a symbol of Hamas's heroism in its own eyes, and the IDF believes that the final defeat of the remaining Hamas forces in this camp will enable Israel to finally reach a deal for the release of the remaining Israeli hostages. In the last 2 months, the IDF's 162nd Division has succeeded in severely damaging Hamas's attempts to rebuild its forces in the northern Gaza Strip. The Jabalia refugee camp is the last place Hamas has managed to concentrate significant numbers of fighters, and it had become a symbol for Hamas. The assessment is that about 3,000 terrorists have regrouped in the camp for some kind of last stand. Knowing this, the 162nd Division went on the offensive, executing a tactical maneuver that ended with encircling the refugee camp from the south and creating a barrier between Hamas forces in Gaza City and Hamas forces in Jabalia. The terrorists were left with two choices: to fight to the death or surrender to IDF forces. So far, about 1,200 of them took the first option and have been eliminated, while roughly the same number have taken the second option and surrendered to IDF forces. Those who surrendered were interrogated and have provided information which helped the IDF continue the offensive. A few dozen terrorists have apparently been able to slip out of the trap, joining crowds of civilians moving south towards designated safe zones. But these small numbers of fighters are too few to be significantly relevant. The challenge of the IDF as of now is dealing with the most hardcore of Hamas's terrorists, the jihadists, who will fight to the last bullet. The IDF is trying to learn lessons from recent events in Jabalia and Bet Lahia so that they can finish the job. In the Southern Command, it was decided that risks will no longer be taken. Any building suspected of containing terrorists or explosive devices is demolished, either by Air Force bombings, tank fire, or by the combat engineers. These last few hundred Hamas fighters are the hardcore of the hardcore. They have nothing left to lose. They know they won't make it out of this alive, and the only thing left for them is to take as many Israelis down with them as they can. This makes fighting them much more complex, but it also means the end is in sight, because once these last holdouts are gone, what's left of Hamas will be ready to begin serious negotiations for the release of the Israeli hostages. In a related story, it was recently published that Israeli troops found intelligence materials, including records of tens of millions of dollars that were transferred from Iran to Hamas each year over the past 2 decades. Simultaneously, with finding the documents, the interrogation of Hamas terrorists captured during the war led Shin Bet investigators to more important information on the subject. The new findings have been published in recent days in a report by the Meir Amit Intelligence and Terrorism Information Center think tank. The report states in part that Iran has been the main strategic support for Hamas since 2014. Iran's support includes military assistance, including means and training, as well as financial assistance for hundreds of millions of dollars to the movement's leadership and its military wing. Hamas senior officials have also publicly thanked the Tehran regime for the assistance in weapons that help harm the depths of Israel. Please continue to pray for Israel. Pray for the safety of the IDF soldiers wherever they are, in the air, at the sea, and on land. Pray for the peace of the hostages and their swift return home. Pray for the swift and safe return of the residents of Israel to the north, to their homes. Pray for the peace of the people of Israel, and most importantly, don't forget to pray for the peace of Jerusalem, as this is a spiritual war, and we will win with God's help.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.